The creaking of rusted hinges echoed through the desolate halls of the asylum as I entered room 13. I had become accustomed to the unsettling ambience that permeated every corner of the old building, but tonight felt different. My name is Daniel. I was an asylum worker, a custodian of the disturbed minds that resided within these haunted walls. The job sucked. I hated it with all my soul, but the pay was good, and that's the only reason why I stuck around. I was making more than a lot of doctors after medical school, so I couldn't really complain. The institution, officially named St. Margaret's Sanitarium, was a decaying relic of an era long forgotten. Its ominous facade stood as a grim testament to the forgotten souls that had once sought refuge within its oppressive walls. I had been working here for years, becoming one with the shadows that clung to the institution's every nook and cranny. Still, I couldn't help but feel bad for some of the patients there. Most of the time, people with minor mental problems were just banished and drugged out of their mind for the rest of their lives, left to die in these places. Room 13 was infamous among the staff as the Whispering Chamber. It housed those patients deemed too dangerous or too deranged for the common quarters. Dr. Harrow, the head psychiatrist, believed in treating the most severe cases in isolation. I've always been firmly against this, but I was never in a position of power to change how the place was run. I had always approached room 13 with caution, but tonight, even the flickering overhead light seemed to hesitate to pierce the darkness within. It was Friday, so it was my turn to take some bullshit data from the patient. I know they do nothing with it. It's just a cover-up for the authorities to make it seem like the place is being properly run. As I pushed open the heavy door, the smell of must and decay assaulted my senses. The room was dimly lit, revealing a solitary figure huddled in the corner. Patient X, as the records labeled him, had been a mystery even to the most seasoned staff members. His eyes, sunken and hollow, stared into the abyss, as if locked in a never-ending conversation with the shadows. He was around average height, white, male, extremely skinny and pale and covered in scars from self-harm. No one really knows how or when he got here. He's just kinda always been here. I took a deep breath, attempting to quell the unease that crawled beneath my skin. "Good evening, Patient X," I muttered, more to reassure myself than to communicate with the resident madman. He remained motionless, lost in the dance of flickering shadows. I approached cautiously, my footsteps muffled by the worn-out carpet. "Daniel!" a voice hissed, barely audible over the ambient sounds of the asylum. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. It couldn't have been Patient X. His vocal cords were said to be irreparably damaged by his own deranged attempts at self-mutilation. "Daniel!" the voice persisted, this time more insistent, as if the shadows themselves were whispering my name. I scanned the room, my eyes wide with paranoia, but Patient X remained oblivious to my presence. Mustering my courage, I turned my attention to the patient. "What do you want?" I demanded, my voice trembling. Patient X's eyes flickered for a moment, and I felt a chill crawl down my spine. "They are watching, Daniel," he croaked, his voice a tortured symphony of whispers. "They know your secrets." A surge of fear gripped my chest. How could he possibly know anything about me? I'd kept my past hidden, buried beneath the layers of routine and mundane conversations with colleagues. Sweat beaded on my forehead as I stumbled backward, my gaze fixed on the shadowy figure of Patient X that seemed to loom larger with every passing second. The room seemed to close in on me, the air growing heavy with an otherworldly tension. I quickly ticked random boxes on my checklist and wrote some bullshit answers and fumbled for the doorknob, my fingers cold and clammy. The voice persisted, now a cacophony of whispers that clawed at the edges of my sanity. "They see you when you sleep, Daniel. They know what you dream." My pulse quickened, each word a relentless hammering against the fragile dam of my composure. I burst out of the room, the heavy door slamming shut behind me. The hallway was devoid of life, the distant moans and echoes of the asylum reduced to a haunting symphony that accompanied my footsteps. I stumbled into the staff lounge, desperate for a reprieve from the suffocating dread that clung to me like a shroud. The flickering fluorescent lights cast eerie shadows on the walls, and my reflection in the cracked mirror seemed distorted, almost monstrous. The night pressed on, each passing hour dragging with it a sense of impending doom. I tried to convince myself that Patient X's words were the delusions of a tortured mind, a mere reflection of his own fractured reality. But the whispers persisted, following me like a malevolent specter as I moved through the asylum. As the clock struck midnight, a hollow emptiness settled over St. Margaret's Cess. The night shift staff were few, and the asylum seemed to slumber in the depths of its own darkness. I found myself drawn to room 13 once again, as if an invisible force compelled me to confront the secrets that lurked within. The door groaned open, the hinges protesting with a mournful wail. Patient X remained in his corner, but this time his eyes met mine with an unnerving clarity. The whispers ceased, replaced by an oppressive silence that hung in the air like a heavy fog. "Daniel," he rasped, his voice no longer a symphony but a solitary note, dripping with malice. "They are here." A cold wind swept through the room, extinguishing the feeble light that struggled to pierce the shadows. Panic clawed at my chest, threatening to consume me whole. I staggered backward, the darkness closing in as if hungry for my very soul. Suddenly the walls seemed to pulsate with a sickening energy. Murmurs, like the anguished cries of the forgotten, reverberated through the asylum. The air crackled with an otherworldly force, and I could sense a presence, unseen but undeniably malevolent. I tried to flee, to escape the clutches of the asylum that had become a nightmarish labyrinth. But the hallway stretched endlessly, twisting and turning like a serpent that refused to release its prey. The whispers grew louder, the voices merging into a chorus of torment that echoed in the recesses of my mind. "They know your sins, Daniel. They have witnessed the darkness within." "They know, Daniel," the voices whispered, now a haunting chant that echoed in the cavernous depths of the institution. "They know." I closed my eyes, hoping to escape the nightmare that had become my reality. But even in the darkness behind my eyelids, the whispers persisted. The sins of my past, the secrets I had buried deep within, were laid bare before the unseen forces that haunted St. Margaret's Cess. I decided to immediately go check Patient X's files in more detail to find out who he really was. I was in a senior enough position to have full access to the room with all the patient's files in it. I burst in and immediately started sifting through all the files. It didn't take long before I found a file with a big red X on the front of it. I opened it and started scanning through the front page with all of the patient's personal details. That's when I saw it. My heart stopped for a good few seconds the moment I saw Patient X's real name, Alex Seymour. I tried to convince myself I was seeing things, so I rubbed my eyes and looked again. But there it was, Alex Seymour. "This can't be true," I whispered to myself. About 10 years ago or so, I was involved in a car accident that completely was my fault. Out of fear of going to jail, I did a classic hit and run, so I didn't know if anyone was injured or not. However, the next day on TV, I saw the exact incident I was a part of being reported. I recognized it by the location and the car I had hit. 2 names were on screen: Jane Seymour, pronounced dead at the scene, and Alex Seymour, in critical condition at the hospital. Since that day, those 2 names were etched into my brain, to the point where I would have nightmares out of pure guilt. I always wondered whether I could have saved their lives if I stayed at the scene. I was never caught by the law, and no one ever knew about this. But this must have been what Patient X or Alex was talking about this whole time. He must have been administered to the asylum, because he wasn't coping with the fact that his wife had been killed. I had to know for sure though, so I once again headed down to room 13. As I approached, I noticed that I left the door open. Fuck, I muttered under my breath. Although supposedly docile, Patient X was to be never left alone outside of room 13 under any circumstances. I sprinted to see whether he was still there, and he was gone. I noticed a note laying on the floor written in shitty handwriting. I picked it up and read it. "They know, Daniel. I know, she knows, and you can't hide this forever. You will be found." That night I left St. Margaret's instantly, my sanity hanging by a thread. The asylum, with its decaying facade and haunted halls, became a distant memory, but the whispers endured, carried by the wind that whispered through the shadows. Patient X's words echoed in the recesses of my mind, a haunting reminder that some secrets are best left buried in the depths of the forgotten. I wondered whether we would meet again, and under what circumstances. For now, I am forced to live out the rest of my life in complete guilt. I have tried to forget about the whole situation and my interaction with Patient X that night, but seeing what I have done to a man because I had killed his wife drags me into a deeper hole every time I think about it. I worry one day I will not be able to get out of this hole and it will swallow me alive. For anyone out there listening to this, live your life in a way where you don't regret anything, because regret will kill you.